Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast, where the new DEFRA Secretary faces questions on her long list of things to do.
We expect to publish the Batters Review before Christmas, the Land Use Framework early next year, the Environmental Improvement Plan we hope to publish this side of Christmas too, and then the Farming Roadmap would be next year as well.
We'll have a lot more a little later. First, though, all week we're talking about growing mushrooms, and today we're going upmarket to sniff out farmed truffles. Now, truffle cultivation isn't usually associated with Scotland, but milder, wetter summers are providing new opportunities, according to Professor Paul Thomas. His company, Mycorrhizal Systems Limited, has 5 sites under cultivation in Scotland, and he's been harvesting the much prized and rather expensive black truffles at another secret orchard site near Edinburgh for several years. That's where Kathleen Carraher met him and his colleague, Gwen Mateer, and her truffle hunting dog, Grace.
We'll find it. So that tells us that there's one. So that little bit of digging. There's one. So that's very small one.
Very tiny. What weight would that be?
12 grams, maybe? 12 or 15 grams.
What will happen, that truffle?
That will get cleaned up and sent to a restaurant. So one of the chefs who really prize Scottish truffles. Yeah, it's in good condition, that one as well.
Good. Paul, tell me a little bit about the process. How does it work?
So we start with seeds. We take them to the lab, we clean them up, we sterilise them, and then over the period of a year we grow them in a special substrate, and we introduce the fungus to the root system. And then we're looking for what's called mycorrhiza. So the truffle forms this sheath over the root system of the tree. And when it's done that, you can't even wash that off. That becomes really attached. And when that's good and healthy, we plant them out into the ground. The key thing with truffles is that they like high pH soil. So on this site, we had to add a lot of limestone to get their pH high and get lots of free calcium in the ground. So we prepare the sites, plant the trees, and then it takes about 6 years. Here we've used mainly oak and hazel, and that's because when truffle cultivation started in the 1970s, those were the trees they started with. So that's what we've got most background data on. This one I think we planted 1,100 truffle trees to the hectare. And then in peak production, I think this patch was doing about 80 kilos to hectare, somewhere around about there. I was just looking at Gwen there for confirmation because she's out here all the time. So that's good. Typically, I think at the moment they're about £500 a kilo, and they'll increase towards Christmas, and then they're a little bit cheaper earlier in the season. So it's a fairly good return.
I worked quite hard on her finding them and leaving them and not eating them. But her reward is that rabbit fur bowl with some treats in it, and she's very, very foodie, loves her food.
Paul, you're also expanding your research into other areas. You're working with some colleagues at the University of Stirling and other agencies to apply this research to other fungi and wild mushrooms. Is it the same process?
It's a similar process. So it's the same kind of biology. So we have to get them growing with a living tree. But because they're different species we haven't worked with before, there's a lot more we have to learn. And what we're really trying to do there, you can hear the truffle dogs in the background, what we're really trying to do there is develop a really low value crop which can be twinned with forestry, so it can produce a significant food source, and it will be lower value, but it would just mean that we can plant a lot more trees. We're working with a lot of edibles that people might well know, like porcini or cep or chanterelles. And we're also working with some lesser known edibles, which could be really productive.
What about the Scottish climate?
Actually really good. So my colleagues at the University of Sheffield, led by Den Chapman, have been working on climate modelling and niche modelling, so we can look at which species are best attributed to which area.
And you really think that this could be more than just a niche activity in Scotland?
Yeah, I really hope so. I think if we can scale it, the key thing is to get it cheap. So we've got to really bring the costs down. At the moment, it's quite technologically involved, so we've got to get it very cheap and very scalable. And that's, I think, when we can start to make a difference.
Good girl, well done.
That's the truffle hound, Grace. I think I would sound just as excited if I found a truffle as well. What a great job. Now, even though most of us have seen quite a bit of rain over the last few weeks, some parts still need plenty more to top up the deficit from last summer's drought. That lack of water meant this year's potato harvest, which has just finished, was particularly difficult after a summer growing season which was challenging for water management and irrigation. Sarah Falkingham has been to see one grower near Malton in North Yorkshire to catch up on the season and see how incorporating organic matter into the soil retains moisture.
The shutter doors are coming up here on a huge barn, and it's full of loose potatoes, and I'm with Andrew Wilson here looking at, this is the harvest of 2025. Just tell me about what's in this barn here, what's storing, where does it go?
In this side of the shed we've got 600 tonnes of royal potatoes that are contracted to McCain.
So, looking over the last season, 6% yield down on your 5-year average, because sometimes the crop was just too hot, it just stops growing. But I know you build in a lot of organic matter to protect the crop.
Resilience is where it's at. We started growing cover crops in 2011, and that's a green cover, oil radish, which is controlling nematodes, oats, which is harvesting light, it's sequestering carbon, and we've got vetch for fertility, and we've got buckwheat for immobilising phosphate. So it's protecting the soil from a battering from the weather over winter. And then in spring we'll top that off. If we've got some muck available, we'll put muck on it. The organic matter that we're putting into the planted rows is helping to retain the moisture, but it also helps the drainage for when we get too much rain.
So there's shutter going up here on another barn.
Yeah, this is a different variety for a different customer. These will finish up in crisps, so those nice little crinkle cut ones. For chips, you tend to want a longer chip, but for crisps, if they're beyond a certain size, they don't fit in the crisp bags.
Some farmers did have a lot of problems with bruising at harvest, and that whole stuff's gone off to stock feed. Is that just because it was so dry this year?
Yeah, the dryness and lighter soil types can fall through harvest quite quickly.
Varieties matter so much in potatoes, and you've done some trials this year and had really good results, haven't you?
Yeah, we've been growing what's termed trial varieties for quite a long time now, and that's a variety that's been in development for a few years, and they put it into a commercial situation to see how it performs on a field scale, really, rather than a small plot.
Do you think breeding more drought resistance into potatoes is going to be, more important as we cope with drier summers?
Yeah, it is really important. It's quite difficult when you consider the dry matter of a potato. 3/4 of each tube is made up of water, and that water's got to come from somewhere. But some varieties can cope with a lot less water than others and still produce an acceptable yield.
Andrew Wilson there from North Yorkshire. Cranswick, one of the UK's biggest meat producers, has been refused retrospective planning permission for a site in Norfolk, housing 7,000 sows. The buildings, which were put up 4 years ago, have attracted hundreds of complaints from local residents over their smell. BBC political reporter Paul Mosley has been following the case.
Well, Cranswick was already using this site at Stow Beedon in Norfolk. It's a remote area in the countryside. But it then sought permission to expand the farm about 8 years ago. That was granted, so it set about building sheds to house just under 7,000 pigs. But since then, there have been a lot of complaints.
What sort of complaints then have been made?
There have been hundreds of complaints registered, and it's been a real hot topic with animal rights groups. Locals have complained that Cranswick didn't follow the design it was given permission to build. The sheds were originally supposed to have solid walls, but instead it has what are described as flexible curtain walls. It's the kind of thing you often see on farming sheds if you think of sort of a roller blind made out of mesh. Now, that in turn has apparently led to terrible smells and concerns about the impact on the health of people living nearby. Stow Beedon Parish Council, for example, said the changes have resulted in the emitting of foul odours, ammonia pollution and dangerous particulate waste. These issues, they say, are reported on a very regular basis to the Environment Agency as they constitute a health hazard to nearby residents and a breach of the site's operating permit, the council says. The council also objected to chimneys erected on the sheds over concerns they would spread pollution over a much wider area. And they were backed up by the Worldwide Fund for Nature, which said the site represented farming against nature and had deep concerns about its environmental impact.
So the retrospective planning was refused by the local council. What were the reasons given for that?
Well, Cranswick went back to the local authority, Breckland District Council, to apply for permission for what it had already built. But a report by a council officer said that it ultimately failed to provide an up-to-date environmental impact assessment. And without that, the council said, it cannot conclude the proposals would not have a significant environmental impact, and that in turn led to it being refused.
And has Cranswick given a response?
Well, Cranswick's saying it provided all the required information when it first put in for retrospective planning permission back in 2021. So this has been going on for quite some time. But Cranswick says the council's taken more than 4 years to review its application. Cranswick said they are in the process of updating the information that has now been requested, and they're working with Breckland Council regarding the plan for the site. Breckland, meanwhile, in its refusal notice, has said it acted proactively and positively discussing concerns with Cranswick. However, it said the issues are so fundamental to the proposal, it has not been possible to negotiate a satisfactory solution.
And will Cranswick appeal?
Well, it is an option to them. They can go back to the Secretary of State, but there is a time limit on when they can do that, according to the decision notice from Breckland Council. That time limit is 28 days. Now, bear in mind, this planning decision was made on the 21st of October, so time is running out.
BBC political reporter Paul Mosley. 8 weeks after taking up her post as DEFRA Secretary of State, Emma Reynolds faced her first barrage of questions from the cross-party group of MPs at the EFRA Select Committee yesterday. Over 2 hours, the MPs quizzed her about farming profitability, environmental payments, water pollution, border controls and illegal meat, fishing policy and plastic beads washing up on the south coast. Well, first, Emma Reynolds gave MPs a timetable for reports that farmers have been waiting for, including Dame Minette Batter's review of farm profitability.
We expect to publish the Batters Review before Christmas, the land use framework early next year, the environmental improvement plan we hope to publish this side of Christmas too, and then the farming roadmap would be next year as well.
Emma Reynolds wouldn't be drawn on the budget, but she said agriculture was a priority for the government. She admitted mistakes had been made with agri-environment schemes, but said many farmers were taking them up. And DEFRA's Director General for Food, Biosecurity and Trade, Emily Miles, talked about lessons learned.
There are some things that have gone well. So the Sustainable Farming Incentive is now with over 39,000 farmers. We spent the allocated budget. That's all making a difference to environmental outcomes. I think looking back on the closure that happened in March, there are some things we could have done better. So the policy design of the scheme, it was open permanently. We hadn't capped how much people could apply for, so that put pressure on the budget. The closure of the scheme, we didn't give sufficient notice about, and we learnt lessons on that as we approached the capital grants scheme. And then there was a particular error that was made when closing the scheme about misinformation to those who'd started but not submitted their cases, which we have worked to rectify. So, I mean, we've learnt a lot from it, I would say. The scheme design questions are now under consideration for SFI, which ministers are now looking at for the future.
When questioned about farm profitability and growth, Emma Reynolds said she wanted to encourage more private finance into agri-environment schemes.
When I went to the Regional Investment Summit recently, I saw some of my previous stakeholders in some of the banks and some of the insurers as well. And they are quite interested in some of the nature credit markets. And I would really love to be in a position where we could actually leverage in more private finance into farming and other aspects of agriculture.
DEFRA Secretary of State Emma Reynolds. That's all from us today. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.